also on the side
Okay.
there. So.
Tell me when you do one ask.
We're
Hi,
good. We're
Melissa.
going live now.
Jeran says we're going live in 3, 2.
Bob says hi.
Hi, Bob. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear him. I can
She
hear
can
her.
hear you.
Yeah, I hear you too.
Good.
We heard you singing.
Yeah, you got a great voice, Melissa.
Well, she can't hear you guys. That's the thing. They say you have a great voice.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. It was
I have
good to
headphones
balance out Jaren's voice.
I'm not singing anymore. I'm making her sing all my songs. I'll write the lyrics and she can sing. So it's live on there. We're good?
Yep, we're live.
All right, awesome. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Jeranism here. Along with me today, we have Bob again, Xanadude60, and we also have TJ with us. So, Bob, I'll let you go first. Say hi to everybody.
Well, hello, everybody. Glad that you made it here, and we're going to be taking your questions a little bit better this week, and not hopefully talking to each other so much. So, take it away.
And then, just so you guys know, make sure you, if you have a question, type out the word question in capital letters, a colon, and then your question, just so it's easy for my wife to see the questions, and she's going to be taking them down and reading them to us, and we'll be answering them. TJ, you're up next. You want to just say hi to everybody, tell them who you are?
Hi, I'm TJ. I'm the creator owner of SmokescreenDesign.com, and just been for many years looking into a lot of conspiracies and things like that. I think where a lot of us start with like the Federal Reserve and 9/11, and got into many different topics and just kind of went MIA for a while. Still kind of behind the scenes looking at some things, but just got bored. And so just really started coming out doing research after I came across flat Earth information. So for me, it's only been, I've really lost track, maybe 2 months or so. It hasn't been too long. I remember as a child just being taught that flat Earth equals there's an edge and you will fall off. How hilarious. Everybody laugh and make fun of that because you can't fall off. So that seems to be like the first thing that we are taught. And when I had a friend share some article on Facebook about flat Earth, and I was like, people actually still believe this? And so I was like, I wanted to go see what these people believe, because I thought it was pretty hilarious that someone believed in the flat Earth, because for some reason I thought it was just obvious that the Earth was round and there was no question about it. So I decided to start looking into flat Earth information, and like many people, one of the first people I came across was Mark Sargent, and then I came across other videos by the Flat Earth Society, and just was craziness, was some of the information that I heard. But then there was also information that was compelling about just some of the evidences, looking at our environment, looking at space, looking at amateur cameras, and seeing that there actually is evidence for flatness, and which was very different than the evidence for space and this globe that we're on. And I've looked into a lot of NASA, and I knew NASA has been lying to us, and I've seen photos that they faked, and I found fakeness in photos that I've never seen anyone else discover. So I knew they were liars, but I never even once considered that NASA was lying to us about Earth, about the shape of this Earth that we lived on. It was just always an assumption to me. I mean, everything I saw and was taught and learned was that the Earth was round and there's other planets out there. Although, when it came to alien life, for me there is no proof that there is life out in space. And then there's always the dogma that people spit out that, oh, you're so arrogant to think that we're it, that you're it, that there's nothing else out there and it's just us. And it's like, okay, so you're repeating something that I've heard other people say, so just dogmatic. But I knew that there's a conspiracy to fraud humans on Earth with alien life, and there's plenty of evidence in regards to that, and so we're being indoctrinated and we're being bombarded with information from Hollywood about alien life and how plausible it is. So then their whole plan with aliens attacking us and all that kind of stuff can come to fruition. And aliens are one of those things I've never seen evidence for. People see UFOs and they think, oh, that's alien. Not that we could ever, we're not smart enough to have any kind of technology like that. So then I just been looking into the flat Earth and really starting to see more evidence for flat Earth than I see for globe Earth. I've been searching for a curve, and I have yet to see the curve. For example, if you go 50 miles out, there should be a drop in curve large enough to be able to take a drone and fly it up, or take a helicopter up, or take an airplane up. We should be able to look down on a 50-mile curve and see, yeah, there's curve there, but I've never seen it, because the higher we go, the more we can see, the further distance we can see, and especially over water, it's always flat. And when people look for curve, they always look for the edge. Let me look for the edge of the horizon. Or if I go in space, let me try to look for the edge of Earth, which also would be the horizon, and let me see if that curves, and that's my proof for curve. So we can't look down on the actual curve, but we can try to look for a horizon and find a curve, or we can try to look for a boat that's in water that's supposedly going over a curve, but yet the boat doesn't seem to go over a curve because it doesn't lean. It doesn't lean towards the other side like it should. So just that's where I've been at, and just really Jeranism came across him, and I really liked his information. Eric Dubé, learned a lot from him, and so I've just been going around and watching a lot of different videos for flat Earth people. And Bob, been having some really good conversations with him, and just there are some things I've thought about before I learned about flat Earth in regards to satellites, and even with just satellite TV, how could that possibly work with satellites in the sky? And so he's been able to help me in my search for the answer with that, which has been quite revealing, especially now that I've been looking into the flat Earth. But so that's kind of a little bit about me and where I'm at and where I come from.
Excellent.
Awesome. It's nice having you, I'll tell you that much. If you guys don't know, we haven't really come out with it yet, but there is a chat room that you're welcome to head to and check out, which is at chat.jeranism.com, and that's where I've been talking to TJ, and Bob is there a lot, so he's there to talk to, and Gavin is there a lot. He's available to talk to. So it's something that you should check out if you are interested in chatting with some like-minded people. And I wanted to mention one more thing, and we'll get to questions, but if you saw my video I released earlier today, we had planned on doing a group balloon release or a balloon launch, and at the same time, I guess Mr. Strive and Survive also was planning on doing one, so we had talked and decided to kind of join forces. So the plan is perfect date, which is a little less than 2 months away, September the 28th, is a blood moon eclipse, and of course a full moon with that as well. So we think it would be, the first time in history, so it's kind of everybody's chance to be part of history, the first time there will be this kind of a mass balloon launch. And we're just hoping to get, even if we had 5 or 10 people, it'd be awesome. If we have more than that, the more the merrier. What we plan on doing is, if there's, let's say there's 10 of us, either separating it out and doing, 5 at one time and 5 at another time, but basically is just trying to see if we all see the same thing when we launch our balloons. For instance, if the moon is on one side of the globe Earth, well, it should not be able to be seen from the other side. So that's something that by doing this group launch, we'll have it coordinated where everyone will launch at the same time. It should be fun, should be interesting. So if you're interested in launching one from your location, just email me at jeranism@yahoo, and stay tuned to my channel. Within the next week or two, we're going to be releasing info on where you can get a deal, if we can find one, on a kit that will kind of have everything. The only thing that you'll have to be supplying is a camera of some type. So that we'll have all that information though for you pretty soon. We're trying to get a deal, and if anybody has any friends or family that have a shop or a hobby shop, I've contacted a few hobby shops that seem to have kits that come with, you know, the parachute for the landing and the weather balloon for takeoff, and a few other things like a styrofoam cooler for the payload. So it's good to get a lot of this information that I'm getting, because I've never launched one myself. Although I found a site today that was a tracker that would track where your balloon would go, and mine will end up about 80 miles out in the Pacific Ocean. So I might have to rethink my ability to launch one, as I won't be getting it back. So, but a lot of other people will be able to, and if you're interested, like I said, go ahead and email me, and we'll keep you in the know so that we can have a cool launch on the 28th of September. So that's that. And let's see, my wife's got questions ready, I hope. You got one?
Sure.
Shoot.
The first one was asked by Music of Sounds, and she said, or he said, sorry, assumed girl, where do you see the flat Earth movement, quote unquote, a year from now?
That is a good question. I'll take it first. A year from now. I guess where I see it versus where I want to see it is different, but where I do see it is slowly gaining a backing. It may not be a huge backing a year from now, but I think it will definitely be something that everyone will have heard about. It'll be a little bit more public that there's people out there saying that they believe in a flat Earth. I think if you ask somebody on the street right now, they would say nobody believes in it. So I would say a year from now, I would bet you that almost everyone's heard of the fact that there is people out there claiming that the Earth is flat. Bob, what about you? What do you think?
Well, I have a little bit more optimistic view. I think that in a year, you're going to be seeing more and more of it in the mainstream media. They will be trying very desperately to debunk it. They will be criticizing it, calling people that support it tinfoil hatters more than ever before. But the reality is, and what we're already seeing today, is that, you know, people, when they actually get past the stigma of you know, you're crazy if you even consider this, and actually start looking at the evidence, and as more and more people do this, there seems to be an explosion, and there is an explosion going on right now all over the place asking this question. And of course the response has been, you've been seeing in the mainstream more and more by Bill Maher, you know, criticizing flat earthers and making it seem like it's just ridiculous, and of course Obama saying things like, we don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. So I think in a year these numbers will grow exponentially, and I think that there is a good side to that and a bad side to that. The good side is that the truth seekers will actually be, you know, realizing somewhat of a victory. However, the bad side of it is that the establishment and the people that are in control, and also control the military and all the major resources of the world, are being backed into a corner. And so, you know, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, a major event that's going to be happening possibly in September. I think September 24th is one of the dates for it, where we could be looking at some sort of a financial collapse, you know, possibly riots. I think that, you know, the establishment has been trying very hard to start race riots by a lot of the activity going on down in the southern part of the country, regardless, and with, of course, all the false flag shootings as well. But I think that as they get backed into this corner, they become more and more desperate to try something that is really going to cause a major disruption, where that they can call martial law. And unfortunately, if and when that happens, that could put a large curtailment on everything, because they will clamp down on the internet the very first thing. That would be, of course, in this country. The rest of the world, hopefully, would carry on. But in any event, it's coming out because we are waking up to all of these false flag events, all of the government shenanigans, not only in this country but all over the world. And so I'm thinking that in a year from now, providing we have not undergone any major martial law or anything like that, I think that we could be seeing a lot of governments, or at least parts of governments, fall. I also think that maybe in a year that it appears that NASA is already being set up as they should be to take the fall. So I think we'll be seeing stuff like that, but it's not going to stop there. I think it's going to continue on. And so I remain optimistic about it, and I think that the truth seekers are well on their way to a victory, but it is going to get worse before it gets better, because, like I said, the people in power are backed into a corner, and it's like any animal in that position, they become very dangerous. So there you go.
Yeah, I would say that I'm optimistic in the fact that I think that it's going to be NASA that has to go first. And the scary part for me about that is there's so many people that love the space industry. I don't ever think you can't get to flat Earth until you pass NASA, and otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to anybody. And I just think it's it would be at least a year, at least, until people would even understand the idea that everything NASA's been doing is fraudulent. And that's why I think I would love to see it happen faster, but I just think that the one thing people can't get over is the NASA thing. I mean, even the people who believe that the moon landings were a hoax, it's so much further than that to go and say everything that they've been saying, everywhere they say they're going, the 24-hour live stream at the ISS. I still go there often just to kind of check it out, and the people that are chatting in there are like, every time, oh, it's so beautiful, look at our Earth, look where we live, look how beautiful it is. And it's just, they're looking at a model. It's sad.
I think it's fabricated chat, too, to be honest with you, because I haven't been able, we've tried a couple times, and I haven't actually been able to connect with other people. We tried this one day in the chat group and actually see each other.
Interesting.
With the exception of, an occasional thing, but I can sit there and type multiple lines, and maybe one thing might come out. So I think somebody's either moderating it heavily, or it's just all completely fabricated, because you watch them talk about, the things they talk about. It's like, oh, this is going on. You'll hear them occasionally actually comment about what's going on the live feed, and everything else is like, this casual
personal life stuff or something.
Exactly. It's like,
it's really
seriously? Weird. So yeah.
I'm actually going to do some testing on that now that you mentioned that, because that's something I didn't think of. But you're probably right, because it does seem completely fabricated. So.
Yep.
Let's see. Next question. What do you have?
I have. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, good. This is asked about Mr. D Knuckle. I think is how you say it. If Jeran is, never mind. That was the funny one. Never mind. I'll ask it. But it says, if Jeran is planning to attach a camera to his balloon, has he learned not to do it on the beach after the phone incident? He should be running low on electronics.
Her phone still works, by the way. It just has a small section of the touchscreen that does not. So if your phone number has a 4 in it, sorry, we can't call you from her phone.
Either an A or a 4, yeah.
Okay, next.
Next one is question is the Cavendish experiment. They're asking about it. It said we have objects A and B. A is denser than B. A will create acceleration from B towards itself. The two will meet each other at some point. Someone wants to know.
That's a question?
I guess. And then it says Cavendish experiment.
Do you know anything about the Cavendish experiment, Bob or TJ?
I'm looking at it on Wiki, and it's basically an experiment apparently that uses an apparatus constructed with a torsion balance, and I'm not
Oh,
exactly.
I've seen it. It's the gravity experiment.
Yes, yes.
It is such a joke. So get this. There's an experiment, and this is something that somebody sent me to when I said that gravity wasn't legit. They said, "Oh, well, have you seen the Cavendish experiment? They do it in every physics classroom." I said, "No, I haven't seen it." Well, I went and looked at a couple videos. Basically, there is a string hanging from the ceiling. So to start off, where is there a string in reality? But let's get past that. So there's a string hanging from the ceiling of a room. Attached to that is a bar. And at the end of the bar are two, let's say, round, whatever, balls. And then on the ground, there's two balls. And then this pole will always shift so that the two balls on the ends of the pole meet the two balls on the floor. It is not proof of anything other than a pole hung from a string will swing until it meets a mass, which is the balls on the floor. Somehow they use this to describe as if that ball on the floor has enough gravity attraction that it's attracting the ball on the pole.
Yeah, that's strange. It almost sounds like it would be more of an electrostatic attraction, if anything, or possibly even magnetic. I don't know, but I will look into it. And
yeah, please do, because I tried and I couldn't get how that has anything to do with gravity, because you're hanging that pole from a string. So, I mean, it's not going to hang perfectly straight, right? It's going to have sway to it, which it's hanging from a string. So that alone just tells. I mean, I didn't think it was a decent experiment to explain gravity when you are starting off with something that doesn't meet the reality, which is there is no string holding anything in life. So how can you then say, well, here's an experiment to prove that happens in reality by now adding a string?
Right,
So,
extremely dubious. It's kind of like the Foucault pendulum thing. You know,
right.
There are so many other possible explanations for it, and yet they pick out the ones that they say, oh, yep, there it is. That proves the Earth's rotation. And I've debated with a few people regarding that, and I think that my model of an electrostatic effect causing the Foucault pendulum is much more viable than the Earth spinning, and it also takes into account why that pendulum changes directions periodically, which of course, as I said before, has everything to do with as the sun and the moon are in their circuit above the Earth, when they converge upon each other, it changes the electrostatic dynamics, which affects the pendulum. So,
right. What is the globe model excuse for why during an eclipse the Foucault pendulum changes direction?
Yeah, exactly. Now,
No,
I
was
provided
asking,
mine.
do they have one?
Oh, no, actually, I haven't even seen that addressed yet, and yet they talk about it, but I haven't found out why that, what the mainstream explanation for that is.
No, I'll have to look into that too. I've seen scientific papers written about it.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every time there's an eclipse, somebody does the test and then reports, and every time it comes out that it does change direction. Usually it goes back though. It'll change direction during the eclipse, and then after totality, it swings back. But I'd never heard them explain why that would happen on a spinning Earth.
Exactly.
So
if somebody has the answer to that, by all means, let us know, because we're not trying to be up here preaching this. We are very much open to any serious inquiry. Just because we happen to believe in the flat Earth model does not mean that if there is some really stunning evidence that comes up that we won't consider it, because if we didn't, we would be pretty hypocritical. So. And I know I'm definitely that way, and I know Jeran well enough to know that he is that way also. And like I said, just because we are flat earthers does not mean we're not going to take other things into consideration. And as I have recently experienced myself this week. So, and also I think we've kind of been leaving TJ out of this. He didn't get a chance to answer the first question or even this one. So TJ, do you have anything that you wanted to say about it?
I don't really remember the question, but I know we were talking about the gravity experiment, which
Yeah.
someone did send me a YouTube link. This proves gravity, and they sent me that one where there's a teacher. I think he's teaching college students, and he's got that like trampoline-looking thing with like the sheet on it,
Oh
and
yeah, I've seen that.
needle, and you drop marbles in it, and they kind of spiral around and orbit around this object, and it's like, yeah, but that doesn't prove gravity and orbits and things like that. I think it's a fun idea, but it doesn't really prove anything realistically.
I agree with that. It proves that things roll downhill.
Exactly.
So
Something
Right.
I thought about the other day, because people say that we can't feel the Earth spin because it's a constant motion. Besides the fact of how fast we rotate, depending on where you are on Earth, and then how fast we rotate around the sun, and then how fast we are rotating through the universe, we can't feel any of that because it's a constant speed. You would only be able to feel it if we slow down and speed up. But so one thought that I had: what about when you travel, say either fly or if you drive, the closer you get to the equator, the faster you move, and the further you get away from the equator, the slower you move. So there would be a difference in speed that should be felt some way. I don't think I've heard anyone talk about that, either flat Earth people or ball Earth people. So I was curious about that one.
Yeah, no, that's a good point that I've tried to bring up a couple times in videos, that if somebody, say, grows up their entire life in Alaska, where you're rotating at 150 miles per hour, and then when they're 20 years old, take a plane flight to Florida, where you're rotating 950 miles per hour, that person will get off the plane and feel just fine. Where
Yeah.
they just increased their spin 800 miles per hour, that person should fall down immediately and be dizzy as could be, but it doesn't happen. And also, the whole idea of not changing speeds is completely false, because the orbit of the Earth would require your speed to change as you went around the sun and came back around. It's not a constant speed that always maintains, because it's not a circular orbit. So
right,
you,
right.
yeah,
That's right. It's like a big egg shape or oval or something.
Yeah,
right.
have you guys ever seen and this is totally applicable to this. There's a model out there that shows, basically we were all shown the sun in the middle and the Earth, the planets rotating around us or orbiting around the sun. But there's another model that I had seen for the first time when I was in Nassim Harameyn's delegate class. And basically he's saying, okay, well, this model is really elusive because, you know, if the Earth is actually traveling at, what is it, 66,000 miles an hour through space, then a much more realistic model would be something to the effect of, you see the sun bolting through space in a straight line, and then you see all the planets.
Oh, the spiral model.
Yeah, in a sinusoidal type of thing, where they go in front of it and then they go back, and if they go in front of it, and if you take that and look at it in relative speed, then they would have to be accelerating to overtake it as they go around the front part of the sun, and then they would have to decelerate as they drop back behind it. So that would be a very dramatic change in speed, and I believe that if we were actually flying through space at 66,000 miles an hour, that would be a much more accurate depiction of our solar system. And in that case, and when you look at that, there is no way that you can say that we are not changing speeds, because not only would we be changing speeds, it would be dramatic.
Yeah, and I haven't seen that actual model. With that model, it has the axis and everything as well, maintaining the directional point at the North Star.
Well, it just shows the sun flying through space.
Right. I've seen it too, but I've looked at that before and said that doesn't. The Earth is kind of moving in a spiral, almost like a tumbling motion, more than a spin on its axis. I don't know, I never could understand that model.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah, because it actually is in all the planets are in a sinusoidal going up and down, except they cross over each other. They go up, and then they come down in front of the sun, and then they go back up and they come down behind the sun, and all of the planets are doing that as the sun is whizzing forward at 66,000 miles an hour. And like I said, that model to me made a lot of sense when Nassim actually presented it, and that's of course when I thought we were actually, we were actually a ball Earth, flying around the sun and everything. I just thought, wow, that's crazy, because that shows so much better, the relative motion of the entire solar system rather than just the sun sitting static and the planets going around it. But regardless, when you look at that model and consider it, it would seem to indicate a dramatic change in speed for not just Earth but all the planets. And then of course you could expand that out to some level, beyond that would show the sun having those gyrations as well. But I think just the solar system model itself is very effective in proving that.
All right, got another question, babe?
Mm-hmm.
Shoot.
Next question is by Alan Higgins, and he's he really wants to know this question.
Okay.
Or this answer. Where does it start? It's kind of long.
While she's getting that, we have 133 people watching.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Wait, start over there. CJ was saying something. Go ahead. That's all right.
It says, why would the sun sink into the ocean rather than fade away in the mirage of the atmosphere like a ship or plane? My only problem. And then says another part of the question, why the sun does not get smaller and smaller until it just appears on the horizon? And it says, so shouldn't the sun just appear to get smaller until we can't see its light anymore?
That's an easy one.
Okay, shoot, Bob.
Okay. The reason that we don't see that, and I see this question a lot, the reason that we do not see the sun from our perspective, as growing larger as it comes towards us and then growing smaller as it goes away, is the simple effect of the atmosphere. When the sun is on the horizon, it is actually not rising above anything, but it is coming towards us in a circular motion. And as we first look at sunrise, we are looking through miles and miles and miles of atmosphere, which have a magnification effect on it, kind of like looking at it through a magnifying glass. And as the sun approaches you, it not only would appear to get larger if there was no atmospheric variable, but it would seem to get huge as you got overhead. But the reality is when you're looking at it on the horizon, the atmosphere is magnifying it greatly, and as it comes towards you, there's less and less horizon to provide that magnifying effect. So it kind of washes out to when it's above you, you have the minimal amount of atmosphere that would provide any sort of atmospheric magnification, and then the same goes the same way as it goes further and further away from you. It goes back into the thicker layers of atmosphere, which would then have a magnifying effect. Now, we've all seen this in real life when we look at the moon on the horizon. Sometimes it can be absolutely huge depending on atmospheric conditions. And again, this is entirely a component of the atmosphere. So, anybody else have any more on that?
TJ, you have anything?
No, the only thing I can say is what the ball earthers say. It's just a mirage.
Pretty much.
You're not really seeing it. It's a mirage. You're not supposed to see it except for on the right circumstances, the right atmosphere, and the right temperature above the water.
For me, personally, on that one, I would say do a little bit of video watching on YouTube by looking up the way that the sunset looks from different places, and I think you'll be surprised, because I saw a lot of videos that were showing the sun get smaller as it went towards setting, not a lot smaller, but a little bit smaller, and I was confused because when I'm out at the beach, I don't see it that way. But
right.
when I did some research, it was because when the sun does get significantly smaller, it seems to happen from places that are not near the ocean. So say Florida or Boston. Not, I'm saying near the Pacific Ocean where the sun sets. So what's happening is they actually see the sun from their perspective almost getting smaller as it goes away off in the distance, to where from California I see the sun, and be it because it's at the water, I can't tell you the reason, but I will say that it does appear when it starts to set to maintain its size, to my perspective. So again, that's something that I will continue to look into because it has baffled me as well. It doesn't baffle me as far as does it hurt the flat earth model, does it help the globe model, because the idea of the sun rising or setting on a globe actually doesn't work for me at all. Mostly because if you think about the way our perspective would be on a globe, the way they say that we can see the horizon, well, when I see the sun rise and then I see the sun set, that should be a very small section of the sky if you're thinking about a globe model. Because how could I be able to see halfway through the earth where it would rise and set? So my day should be 4 hours long. Actually, I have a image I'll drop in the chat room real quick for you so you can see what I'm talking about. But basically, the globe doesn't work at all for the sunrise and sunset for me, because the fact that I can see both and both of them happen 12 hours apart wouldn't make any sense on a globe, but it would make sense on a flat earth model. So
Right, and also, Jeran, let me add a caveat to my answer.
please.
In that, because that you have said, you've stated, and I believe this entirely, that sometimes you can see that effect and sometimes you can't. Well, we all know that our atmospheric variables change day to day. A lot of it has to do with the moisture content in the atmosphere. The heat levels absolutely have an effect. Particulate levels, especially with all the crazy chemtrails, will have some very interesting effects. So to say that this will be a consistent effect every single time would be folly, because it depends greatly on the atmospheric conditions of the moment, of the day. So I just want to throw that in there also.
Yeah, good point. And I think also the water has a lot to do with it, because I think we've all seen the sun appear to melt into the water. Gives that very weird double view. And by the way, I dropped that link just so that people could see what I was referring to. It may be a funny looking picture. My wife said it looks like Mickey Mouse.
An upside down smiley face. The Earth is wearing headphones, my wife said.
Yeah, exactly, see? But no, really what I was showing there is the way that they tell us that the horizon would look on the globe. Well, that's the place where you would see the sun rise, and that's the place where you would see the sun set. If that was true, is our horizon. So that's why it's never really floated with me. But back to what I was saying, I think that it has a lot to do with that water, that melting, that refraction, whatever you want to call it, a mirage. That it has a lot to do with that as well. I think the water can play huge tricks on you. And I've always had questions about what the sun looks like from Hawaii when it's setting here, but Bob's going here in the next week or so, right, Bob?
Yep, just a few more days. I'm there.
So we're going to do a little experiment where we're going to be at the beach when he's at the beach and see what each other sees. So we'll report back on that. Next, babe.
Why, this is asked by Mister?
Mm-hmm.
Why does North Star not move, and could it be center of universe, not us?
Interesting. I mean, for me, did you guys hear that question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I mean, I don't think it can be the center of the universe because I don't think stars are actual suns. So that's my answer. So as far as center of the universe, no, I don't think that. I do think it is a navigational star meant for navigation. Maintains its in alignment with the Earth and the North Pole. Now, a lot of people will tell me that it doesn't, or that it changes over time. And they say that the Earth wobbles and that the wobble is 26,000 years, I believe I heard. If that were true, then we should constantly have a new North Star, in my opinion.
Actually, the wobble it's supposedly related to the precession of the equinoxes, which would be once every age, which would be 2160 years, that we would make a slight variation. However, as you go through the entire precession of the equinoxes, the North Pole star is said to go over to, I think, I can't remember the other star that it's supposed to go to, but again, nobody's ever observed this, so I would, maybe it's true, but you couldn't prove it by any modern day observation because we don't live that long, nor have we been keeping records that long.
Right. TJ, anything on that, on the North Star?
Nope. It's I know. Just my thoughts on topics like this. I mean, it's always fun to discuss, and maybe sometimes we can come up with answers or whatever. I just think it's probably one of those things that we may all just speculate on and never really know. I mean, everyone's got their answers for whatever. So yeah, I don't have an answer on that, and sometimes I just think that we're just not going to know answers to things. It's just one of those mysteries.
Yeah. Vega, I see somebody put up there. I think that's right, Vega. Thank you, Facepalm.
And they said that was in the past, or it will be in the future. What do you mean by that?
I think that's the one that it will alternate back and forth to, where we will ultimately have our new North Star, supposedly Vega. But again, we can listen to NASA's, sermon on that, or we can look with our own eyes. But because of the unbelievable amount of time that would have to pass to do that, that's patently impossible. And of course, again, that's a trademark of NASA. We can never really test it or see it ourselves because it's either too far away or it takes too many million years, and so we just have to take their word for it. So there you go.
Yeah, well, I think to me it's just crazy that anybody would ever allow themselves to believe the distances of the stars given. It's completely outlandish and purposely set that way so that whatever happens above us can be easily dismissed. And that to me is just not reality. There is not something that is so far that whatever happens to us makes no difference in the sky. I can stand out on my driveway, look right up at the North Star, and watch at night as the other stars in this, the Little Dipper starts to do its counterclockwise rotation until the day comes and those stars disappear. And I'm supposed to believe that I'm spinning around in a circle, and that star is so far away from me that it makes no change in the fact that I'm spinning. And remember, when you spin, you're facing one direction. Half a spin later, you're facing the other direction. Okay, so to change your view, that means you're staring at the front of Walmart. You make a spin halfway around, so you're now facing away from Walmart. That is the equivalent of them saying Walmart is so far away that when you spin around, you're still looking at Walmart. It's a joke.
That's right up. Yeah, that's right up there with, if you look far enough into the universe, you'll eventually see the back of your head, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a thought experiment like Newton's, right? If I throw this cannonball at the perfect speed, it will rotate around the ball Earth and come back and hit me in the back of the head.
Yeah, so there you go.
And the North Star, just if you're wondering, they say is 2.4 quintillion miles. And they tell you very easily, it's 400 light years, which makes you think, it's kind of far. But if you actually think of the number is asinine by every stretch. And if you ask somebody to prove it, the way they prove it has to take into effect the speed of light. But then we know that gravity changes light, according to them, the speed of light. We know that any kind of mass between there and here is going to change the speed. So there's no way they could ever come up with any speeds. And if you just think about those stars above your head that maintain their constellations as they go through the sky, you have to remember those stars are not near each other. Those stars are trillions and quintillions of miles away from each other, and yet it makes no difference. And the way they get away with it is by telling you they're so far that it makes no difference. It's to me, that's when I know that they have completely lied to us. You have one ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go.
Next question is by 360.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's kind of a half question, half something else. But how can meteors be real if you cannot light rocks on fire here on Earth? It said supposedly meteors are rocks that come down on fire all the way to Earth's surface.
Good question, Bob. Do you have a feeling, or TJ, on meteors and that question?
I do, but TJ, if you have one, go ahead first.
No, certainly don't.
Okay. Well, first of all, we may not be able to. Well, we can light rocks on fire. I mean, let's face it. What do you think volcanoes are? And we have smelting plants. We can light rocks on fire. So I think that, possibly, I can't explain exactly if they're coming from space, and of course the mainstream explanation has something to do with, well, as they enter our atmosphere, they're going so fast, and ultimately the friction is so hot because they're coming in so fast that it causes them to burn up. Well, so if we're on the flat Earth model, though, and there is some sort of a firmament up there, and I don't know, this is pure speculation. I'm trying to go by empirical evidence because, I've walked outside and I have watched the Perseids, and I've seen some pretty spectacular stuff where they light up the sky. And I think that possibly an explanation for that, and I will probably look into this further, but I think possibly an explanation for that would be that there is an electrostatic element up there. Well, we know there is. That when you pass an object through that possibly could be part of the firmament falling down through it, it could become very hot, because of this electrostatic influence or possible friction from it. Again, I don't know this, but I certainly don't believe the old re-entry story, blazing through our atmosphere and causing that much friction, because obviously that would go against pretty much our entire model, or at least to some degree. There are different models that would allow for no firmament, but I don't know. It's one of those things that I don't think we can actually say for sure what it is, and I would tend to doubt anything that NASA would have to say about it. But nevertheless, the effect is real. We've all seen it, and there has to be an answer. It's just like very much when people talk about, well, I can see those satellites running around up there, and my response to that is, well, all throughout history, even before the advent of any alleged space travel, people have identified moving objects in the skies. What they are, why they move, I'm not entirely sure. There are some interesting possibilities as to what they can be. There's a guy out there by the name of John Leonard Walson, who Jose Escamilla did a fantastic and really intriguing documentary on, where he has developed a sort of way to look at stars, and when he looks at these things, they appear to be changing shapes, like they're morphing, and he calls them starships and stuff. But there's something up there, I think, really, other than what we've been told. Whether it's some sort of a holographic projector, I don't know. But there are very interesting phenomena that are being observed that certainly don't fit in with this model. And I know I'm digressing way away from the hot rocks argument, but all I'm saying is that there's a lot of other models that could definitely explain this. One of them would be another one of them would be the magnetics of the Earth, and looking at toroidal patterns that come out of magnets. We've been taught this as magnetic fields in school, but you can actually, as I showed you in that video last night, Jeran, you can actually take static magnets and create a vortexing field, which will cause things to spin around inside of it. So I'm kind of convinced at this point that those are the factors that we can actually measure, that we can duplicate in a laboratory and scale, that those are the things that are going to give us the answers that NASA, of course, refuses to. And so that's why I constantly pursue those type of things.
No, I think that.
Yep. Yeah, very good, very good. And I also I agree with you, Jaron. I think a lot of these answers will come from the field of magnetics. They there's so much there in looking at fields. I've seen magnetic experiments that would definitely, you can visualize the sun and the moon being encompassed in that, and you know, it's just, to me it seems like it's the most viable explanation for a lot of the phenomenon that we see. So I have really, as I told you, I'm really pursuing that, because it is absolutely fascinating, you know, what they have been able to do with magnetics, both with, you know, moving magnets and just creating static magnetic fields that actually vortex. Just absolutely mind-boggling stuff.
Yeah, and if you, I just wanted to mention real quick, just to everybody, one of the reasons that I like Bob so much and that we've got along so well is because when we first started talking, it was very clear to him and clear to me that I don't have all the answers, and neither did Bob. And having somebody that you can run things by, sometimes you have one of these flashes in the pan, you know, you wake up in the middle of the night, you're thinking of something. It's so cool to have somebody that you can run some of this stuff by and just say, what do you think of this? Have you ever thought about that? And then he'll go off and play with something for a day, or he'll tell me something and let me play with it for a day. And that's what I love about that, is that's science. That's what science is, as I always say. It's just so cool to actually have somebody that you can do that with, because think of the world today that, you know, if you say anything about any model that isn't exactly what is already been told to you is true, then you're going to get ridiculed for it. And so I just wanted to bring that up, that that's why I like to have this show, to where we don't know all the answers. This isn't a ask us the questions and we'll give you the correct answer, because that's not science. It's kind of, if you have a question about something, we hope to give you our interpretation of where we're at right now. Doesn't mean it's not going to change, and that's what science is. It should be ever changing. Excuse me. There should never be a set answer for anything, because the whole point of science is to try and debunk the current accepted model and to get better through experiments and new findings. And that's when we should all realize there was a problem with science, is when they said, hey, we got this, you guys kick back, we're taking care of everything, we know all the answers. And I sat there through my entire high school career and middle school and just listened and let them say whatever they wanted, and I regret it now, because I think we've got everybody believing something that isn't necessarily what we get in reality. So I'm dropping that link right now to the video. There you go. You got the next one? Or anybody else?
Yeah.
Got something to say?
I was going to say, actually, one other thing, one other link you might want to drop is the one that I sent you last night, and it was made by Stinky Cash, and it is a fantastic link in that it shows very, very effectively the sunrise and the sunset conundrums that a lot of people you know, ask about. He lays it out very, very clearly, and I just think it's a great video. I think everybody should check it out, you know, because he really has cleared up a lot of questions, especially in my mind when I watched that. And of course, the other thing I want to say is that, again, you're right, Jeran. We ask questions. I don't want to be considered as a preacher of anything like NASA is. I'm a researcher. I ask questions. I have my opinions on a lot of things, and I want to stress they are my opinions. When I say that, and I may sound like I state them in the absolute, but it's only because, you know, I've researched some of these things long enough to really come to believe in them. But that will not stop me for 1 minute, you know, of considering an argument that actually has some merit. So yeah, that's just what I want to say about that. Go ahead, Jeran.
Very cool. No, and I want to repeat the same thing from my end, because one of the biggest issues I see is people commenting on my videos and saying how wrong I am or how stupid I am for thinking a certain thing. And if you feel that way, then please don't watch, because the whole reason I started doing this was I thought it was cool to explore new ideas and new thoughts and deliver it in a funny way. Humor is important to me. I love if a movie's not funny, I don't like it. Whatever the movie is, it has to have some element of humor. So I tried to bring that and let everybody, and I figured by talking about things, what can it hurt? By bringing up something and saying, hey, maybe it's actually this way. Well, if everybody looks at it and everybody sees it as completely false, then I know it's false. But a lot of the things that I'm bringing up caused people to follow me by saying, I have that same question, and you're right. The current model doesn't fit what we see. And so that's why I've continued on. And at no point am I ever getting on my videos and saying, I'm Jesus Christ. What I'm about to say is the Word of God. I am saying that I'm an idiot who is attempting to basically break down the world I see in front of me because the people whose job it is have failed miserably. And I refuse to believe things that somebody just says, this is the truth, even though it's not what you see. And if I have to go through life and be the idiot because I don't want to believe what people tell me, so be it. I'd rather live that way than to walk around and be a drone who just believes everything that the government tells me, and 9/11 was box cutters and Arabs, and that's just me. So anyway,
Amen.
you have another question? Okay, go.
Let's see. What? Sorry. How can the moon be half full with the lit part facing up at night?
Well, I guess it depends on where you are from.
Oh, no.
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear it.
She said, how can the moon be half full with the lit portion facing up at night? So, at least as far as I've ever seen, that is not what takes place. Now, I have seen during the day, well, let's say late evening, so 6, 7 o'clock, that the moon is on one side, the top half lit, the sun is setting on the other side, and that, I hate to say anything about a dome because I've never seen one, and I try and stay to my mantra that I don't say there's a dome because I've never seen one. But then again, things like this are evidence to me that something looks funny about that, it appears that the moon is facing the sun if there was a dome, meaning it's pointed up, and if I follow that path, it goes right on over to the setting sun. So, not saying that it gets its light from there, but I do believe that maybe there's some sort of magnetic charge, electric charge that it is getting from the disk sun. So, next. TJ, you got some on that?
Nope. I've been trying to pay attention to the moon and the sun, just trying to see what's happening. I think one thing that's difficult is just when looking, because of our perspective, many times it looks like that the moon is up real high and that the sun is going down. So sometimes it's hard just to see the true perspective of where is the sun in alignment with the moon and how should it really be lit. But yeah, I don't have anything on that.
Yeah, one thing, Jeran, that I can suggest that I found really fascinating was a guy named Wakey Wakey. I believe his name is Mark Knight. And if you go to the wakeyWakey.com website, there is a document on there called Flat Earth Advanced, where he goes into these moon phases in fairly good detail. And interesting, Cammie and I were looking at that the other day because my wife Cammie is working very hard on a model to explain these moon phases and also anomalies that we see, during equinoxes and stuff. She pretty much thinks she has it figured out, and she's working very hard to make a model of that. And hopefully, we can present that at some point. But until that happens, I think one of the best places somebody could go would be over to Mark Knight's site, Wakey Wakey, and take a look at that Flat Earth Advanced document, because I think it's very well done and very well explained. He does have some things that he admits that are perplexing him, and we're working on trying to obtain those answers, or at least come up with a reasonable hypothesis on them.
Awesome. Got another one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next one is, he keeps asking this one over and over. It says, Jeran, did you know that every 6 months the sun shadow should be opposite and 12 noon would be 12 midnight every 6 months on a ball?
Yeah.
Oh, all too well.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, I pointed out in my videos, basically what he said, if you didn't hear the question, was about the fact that we should be alternating every 6 months, being midnight being the middle of the day, and then midnight being middle of the night. Because the Earth spins relative to the sun in 24 hours, so if you took the halfway distance between a full year, we would be facing the opposite way. And they don't really have any kind of explanation for that. I've heard people try and tell me something about sidereal time, but that's not correct because that's Earth relative to the stars, not relative to our star, so, or our sun. Bob, you have anything on that?
Yeah, actually, pretty much the same thing that you just said. However, I will say that I actually posited that to a guy I was debating. Int Cheese, I think, is his YouTube handle. And so I posited that question to him, and he came back and first he made basically the same mistake about the difference between the solar day and the sidereal day. And of course, the sidereal day is 23 hours, 56 minutes, and I don't know, 4 seconds, something like that. And the solar day is precisely 24 hours. So when I posited that question to him, and I said, okay, so why is it then that when the sun reaches the other side, that after 180 or 182 spins and facing the same orientation, why then is the sun behind it, and how do you explain that? And his response to me was that when it's kind of a combination of the two effects. He said that when you spin 360 degrees, you also are making a small degree, like maybe a 1 degree advancement around the sun, okay? And if you break that down, that would basically account for the discrepancy that would occur on the other side of the sun. So that is an explanation, and I have to admit, there is, it sounds good on paper, it really does, but whether or not it's actually true, I seriously doubt, because I don't believe the sun follows that model at all. I think that's just a very clever explanation for it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, but
it can't be real, because if you think about it also, the sun is traveling itself 425 miles per hour through the solar system. I'm sorry, through the galaxy.
Yeah, a million miles. Yeah, you said miles per hour, but yeah.
What'd I say?
Right.
Sorry.
You said 425 miles an hour. It's like, wow,
425,000. Sorry.
Yeah. So
and
yeah,
it just makes no sense.
That would tend to invalidate that, but they don't ever take these larger thoughts into consideration. It's like I said, when you look at that other model of Nassim's, it's like, holy cow, we got to be speeding up and slowing down dramatically, and we would feel that.
Well, think about it this way, Bob. If we let's say we rotated the sun in 2 days, okay? So meaning in 1 day we ended up on the other side, and in 2 days we ended up back. Well, it doesn't matter how far you're traveling during that first day. If you're making one complete turn, which is you start on one end, you make a 24-hour turn, then on the other side of the Earth, it wouldn't matter that you traveled that far in a day. How does the travel have anything to do with the rotation? They're completely different movements.
Because essentially in his model then, that you would be turning slightly beyond 360 degrees.
Well, in his model, you'd have to turn you'd have to turn 360 plus 180.
Well, no, because and what he's saying, and I get this, and what he's saying was that if you're actually advancing just like maybe 1 degree per day, of course, and then 365 days, 360 degrees roughly, give or take, that would mean that the rotation of the Earth, it would not precisely come back to the same spot, but it would in fact advance slightly 1 degree.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if it did advance 1 degree in that one little move, then it would have to, by mathematics, advance the entire 180 in the time it went to the other side in 1 day. there's no, if what he's saying is because we're spinning and moving at the same time that you are gaining a degree, then if you went basically in 6 months, we gain 180 degrees, right?
Yeah, and that of course would bring the Earth back around to face the sun.
Correct. So let's say that we do that in 1 day, is what I'm saying, just to kind of make it more simple to understand, rather than saying it takes us half a year to get to the other side. Say we get there in 1 day. Well, that same amount of change, wouldn't that have to be applied to the same? I mean, if we're traveling the same distance in 6 months or in a day, to me it would have to be the same amount of change. Or you're saying because you're making each turn every bit of the way, it's gaining a degree every day, but when you make one turn in 1 day, it wouldn't do that? I guess that's what basically I'm saying is it sounds like to me it's another one of the bullshit explanations for something that,
But this one actually has a degree of logic to it, and what I'm saying is that what he was explaining is saying, okay, picture it this way. If for every day, let's just say the year is 360 days instead of 365 to simplify this, okay? All right, so what he's saying then is that we are not going just 360 degrees in a circle, the one rotation for the day, but he's saying that we are in fact going 361 degrees at the same time that we are advancing 1 degree with respect to the rotation around the sun. And when you look at it in that model, then by the time it's on the other side of the sun, we have advanced through 180 degrees, which keeps our perspective at noon back towards the sun. And that to me actually makes sense. But the fact that I don't buy the model, in any way, shape, or form anyway, because there's so many other problems with it, that explanation may sound good, but again, how do we prove that? Other than, well, people are going to say, well, you've got your observation. Yes, we do. But, there's a lot of things that you can make up and put into a model that are not necessarily true. And there's a lot of other factors that would debunk this idea. And that's, and that's why, I personally don't believe that that's the case, even though the theory flies. At least it does for me. I can see what he's saying.
I see, and I've heard that same excuse and tried to draw it out, but you're right. I mean, no one ever said that their system doesn't work out mathematically, right? I mean, that's not the issue at all. A lot of people like to bring the mathematics up and say, well, the math works perfectly, the math proves this, the math. It's like, you know what? That would be true if it matched our reality.
Right, but the math doesn't always match the observed data, and that's the problem with it. I mean, so in this case, the math might observe the math might agree with the observed data, but that's only in that particular instance. Like I said, we've already addressed several other issues here that would tend to completely negate that, on face value alone. So, who's to say? You have to actually come up with a model that works 100% under empirical conditions. Otherwise, it's not really worth its salt, in my opinion.
I think when I really came to the conclusion that there's no way, and I'll flat out say that it is impossible that we live on a ball. And I can say that with the most conviction I've ever said anything in my life, because, and this is something I'll tell everybody who's watching, everybody who's listening, please go either get a globe or whatever you have to do and really sit down for an entire day and just picture the fact of what they say is happening on this globe and realize that it doesn't work. It's impossible. It cannot be truthful in every way. I mean, there's really no way. Yeah, mathematically, okay. Mathematically, you can prove to me then with math that it is possible for fake human beings to live on a sphere. But then when you bring that to our reality, it doesn't work. Just simply talking about people in Australia being upside down and people on the top being right side up, they immediately say it's because of gravity. Each person has their own perspective. To each person, they're being pulled to the center. You start talking that, and you're talking video game talk. That's stuff that can work out in anything but reality.
Exactly. It kind of gives Mark Sargent a little credibility on that model. But But you know,
Excuse me, my shelf just broke right here.
Your shelf broke, yes. But I mean, so mathematically, you know, there are a lot of things that are not true and that they never even try to adjust to explain mathematically. And one of them, the simplest one and the most obvious to me, is like, you know, we have a supposed fixed rate that gravity pulls at things, so many meters per second squared. I can't remember exactly what the formula is, but okay, so if that's true, then why is it that, you know, you can be you know, like for example, I weigh like 290. Okay, so if I go on a scale and I'm sitting at the equator, the centrifugal force should offset that gravity by a calculable amount. Okay, and yet if I were to go down there and weigh myself, and then I go up towards the North Pole and I weigh myself, there should also be a calculable amount of difference that I would weigh more than I did, you know, at the equator, because the centrifugal force would be offsetting my weight. And so, unfortunately, even though we can calculate that, and the math shows us the numbers that are there, the experiments that have been done, and they have been done, in fact, it was done with gold, do not indicate any difference whatsoever. So again, where's the math on that? Sure, the math predicts one thing, but that prediction is not true under empirical conditions. So there you go.
TJ, you got anything?
No. Yeah.
Just laughing at us? That's fun, though.
Yeah. Well, you guys do it.
Okay, you got another question?
Mm-hmm.
Shoot.
Let's go with, this one was asked by Mr. McCamian.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on a holographic universe?
I know, tough one. I'll lean to that one and just say that to me things are physical because I can touch things here on the Earth, and holographic universe just doesn't make a lot of sense. It then your meteors, your shooting stars, your things like that fall apart. I don't have a good answer for that, Bob.
Well, you know I'm going to have an opinion on that one.
Yeah, tell them how you know what you know.
All right, here's what I think. All right, I think that the idea of a holographic universe is entirely plausible, but to take it a step beyond that, even beyond the idea of us being like on a Star Trek holodeck, when you consider the fact that everything that we experience, everything that we touch, everything that we see, everything that we hear, is nothing more than an electrical impulse that is sent from our senses, our sense of touch, our sense of sight. It is translated to an electrical impulse, which then goes to our brain as an electrical impulse and is then perceived as something real. So I guess a bigger question, and this gets into a philosophical area, is how do we know that anything is quote unquote real, or what is real? It could all be nothing more than just a set of electrical impulses, like when you're dreaming. And you know, we've all had dreams and thought that, oh my God, that was so real. It was just freaky. And I felt pain. I felt emotion. You know, I felt everything referring to our senses. So, you know, we may even be beyond that, in that we are nothing more than just consciousness experiencing itself. Or we could back that off a level and say that yes, everything is is a hologram, and we are on a great big holodeck. We can look at reality in many different levels. And so which one is accurate? Who knows? But one thing that we do know, or our science tells us, is that everything we perceive is nothing more than electrical impulse hitting the brain. So that begs the question, what is real? There you go.
Yeah, I love the philosophical stuff, you know that. But for me, that gets into an awesome point, which is simply, how can you even contemplate the idea that it's accidental, it's from the Big Bang, it's a natural occurrence. None of that stuff works when you just think of who you are, what you think about the fact of what Bob just said. I mean, those things right there tell me there's something else at play here, and that alone is enough to get me to realize that it's not that we evolved from some primordial ooze. Bob, I do have a question for you. Have you ever, that you can remember, had a dream about the moon or the sun?
No, not really. I do dream that I fly a lot, though.
It's kind of funny because
without an airplane.
You know how you can't dream, well, at least they say, I've never have, you can't dream that you die?
Right, yeah, they say if you die in your dream, you die in real life.
Right. Well, I've heard that you can't dream about the sun or the moon.
That's interesting.
Interesting. I know, I heard that too, and I can't really contemplate, I can't really remember, I mean, I've dreamt that it's daytime, but I can't remember dreaming about the actual physical sun or the physical moon. Somebody was saying anything that you can't dream about isn't real. Isn't that interesting?
Well, yeah, and there could be some merit to that because, as I've said many times, and this again gets philosophical, so don't jump all over me in the comment group. But if the creation, in my belief, let me state it off with that. If you are not aware of it, if something is not in your awareness, then it is not there. It is not real. Quantum physics has done experiments like this, and I think I sent you the double slit experiment, where
that's so cool.
It is. It's so cool. You should try and throw a link up for that. And if anybody ever saw the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, there's a little cartoon segment in there where this little cartoon guy basically addresses the double slit experiment that's been done in many, many universities and done all over the world. And basically the conclusion of it is that scientists can do these experiments, but when they started doing this double slit experiment and started predicting, what should have been an interference pattern versus, just a splotch of balls hitting on a black back wall, that the experiment really started acting strange. And when they scrutinized it and actually watched on an atomic level what was going on with it, somehow the experiment just changed parameters, as if it was aware, as if the universe became aware that it was being watched and scrutinized. And of course, there's been all kinds of experiments. Dean Radin has done a lot of consciousness science work at, I think, Princeton is where he's at. And there's so many things that indicate so strongly that when we turn our focus, our consciousness on things, that it can dramatically change, the world we live in. There was one experiment that was done by a group of meditators that did a meditation basically focusing on world peace and stuff like that, and they were very trained at this, and there was a large group of them, and sure enough, for the period that they were doing this meditation and carrying on this exercise, violence dropped worldwide measurably. When they were doing this. I find things like this fascinating, and that only goes, to the idea that, our reality that we experience is not so much set in stone as it is brought about by a consensus of all of us. And so, when you look at things under that model, the laws of physics, so to speak, just absolutely fall apart. And then it also starts supporting the idea that the Creator is in each and every one of us, and we are part of that. Even the Bible and the religions tell us that, if you want to find God, look within. And I'm not a religious person by any means, but I certainly find these scientific premises that have been proved over and over and over again very, very interesting, and it sure lends a lot of credibility to these philosophical ideas. So, did I answer the question, or did I forget what it was?
Yeah, I'd asked. Yeah, perfectly. To me, I love the philosophical stuff too. It's one of the reasons I made the channel to start with. Those things are awesome to me. That video, I did put a link if anybody. I'll actually drop it again in case I forgot. I don't remember now. So I just dropped that link. That's to the Dr. Quantum video. Really cool to see that it's as if we're being watched, and the watcher is changing changing the rules of the experiment as we go along, which is really unbelievable to see. But I also think that we can have some effect on the universe, and if anybody can ever think of a test, please email me. I would love to do something to where if we could have 2,000 people who at the same time did something measurable, thought about something. I did see an experiment once where somebody asked everybody to grab from their homes. I didn't actually see it firsthand, but they asked everybody to go grab a broken watch or a watch that wasn't ticking. And somehow collectively, these people all thought about this watch. Each person had a watch at their house, and supposedly these watches started ticking, all of them for less than 10 or 20 seconds, that they ticked and died. But it was as if the collective energy was enough to get that battery enough energy to tick 10 more times or 20 more times. So that's unbelievable stuff. I would love to be able to test something like that, but I think you have to do it for the right reasons too.
Yeah, actually, you can test it, and this is one experiment I would love to do. But I got really interested in remote viewing, and it's interesting because one of the things that Dean Radin did in some of these metaphysical, I guess, experiments was they had a trained remote viewer that was focused on an area that, of course, he had never been to before. He was given a description of it, told to send his conscious energy there, and it was literally, over 1,000 miles away. And what they recorded at the at the site that was being observed was that the background energy levels shot up dramatically as soon as this remote viewer set his mind on it. And this was repeated over and over and over again with virtually 100% repeatable results. And how do you explain something like that unless that this would be a mental construct? And of course, the good things about a mental construct is even NASA's world can be real. So
somebody in the chat said that for a test we should have 2,000 people think about crying box disappearing.
There you go.
I'm all for that one. That's funny. Yeah, there was another one with 9/11 even. I guess there was a bunch of people wearing heart monitors for some reason, and when they all turned in the results, there was a surprising dip in all of the heart rates or whatever they were measuring in the 3 to 4 hours before 9/11 took place. For whatever reason, they don't know the answer to that, but I think that we are capable of so much more, and sometimes I think that is the secret that the leaders of this world, or the elite, use against us, is they know by keeping us dumbed down and keeping us thinking that we are worthless and space junk, or whatever Neil deGrasse believes, that we're product of the stars, that we don't have the ability to change our environment. And everybody has to know that with good thoughts, you put good thoughts out, like they say, that's the best way to get good results.
Absolutely does come back, and I'm a big believer in karma, because if you put out that good energy, I believe it comes back. And another thing, I didn't hear about the experiment that you were referring to about 9/11. However, it was a beautiful opportunity for, again, another one of Dean Radin's experiments, where they have these random number generators that are placed all over the globe. And of course, they just sit there and essentially are doing electronic flips of the coin. And what they noticed on events like 9/11 was just before the alleged planes were hijacked and crashed into the building, supposedly, there was a dramatic change in the random number generators, where they started becoming very much not random statistically. In fact, it was so pronounced that it actually started occurring a good hour before the attacks ever actually happened. And that again is amazing, because there must have been a lot of stress and a lot of pre-planned stress, that was coming before this. It was kind of like a precursor mechanism. It's kind of like another experiment they did is they will wire up somebody to electrodes and they'll monitor their brainwaves on an EEG, and they will flash certain images across. Some of them are very calm and soothing, and others are quite disturbing. And what they found is that the images that they were going to flash that were really disturbing would cause a reaction in the person that was being tested a few seconds before they even saw it. So it was like demonstrating this very dramatic effect of precognition, by the EEGs. So it's just so fascinating, and I know we're getting way off topic here, so I'll let you go back with it.
TJ, got anything? Oh, he's
the show.
Going back to the topic, do we dream about the sun or the moon? I don't think that I've ever dreamed about the sun or the moon, but I also think that before really looking at flat Earth, it really wasn't that much that I really paid attention to them. It's not something I've looked at all that often. But like that comment you said that if you that someone said if you can't dream about it, then it isn't real. But it's like a lot of the stuff I dream about isn't real. So I don't know.
In this world,
the other side of that is that if you do dream about it, it probably isn't real. But then again, we get some. We do get some things in our life that happen that do end up in our dreams. So it's like a mixture of reality and things from movies and just all sorts of things just kind of come together. But so I think it'd be an interesting experiment to see if you spent a lot of time really looking at the moon and the sun videos, real life outside, if you did start getting them into your dream. Because I know sometimes when I really pay attention to something, then it does tend to get into my dream. So that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to what other people say too, because I've said that to people before, and they've said, "Oh no, I've dreamt about the sun." So I'm certainly by no means saying that it's true or not true. I can't personally remember ever dreaming about it.
Not me either.
Yeah, one thing I was just thinking about math and it not proving our reality is, for instance, flipping a coin, them saying that it's a 50-50 chance, right? Which we all know. But it also doesn't have to be and doesn't always come out to that. If you flipped a coin 100 times, it's not going to be 50 heads and 50 tails. And it could be any amount either way. And if you flipped a coin 9 times and 9 times in a row it was a heads, well, they say that the next flip is a 50-50 chance, but it's really not. And the fact that since you've had 9 heads in a row, chances are it's going to, even though they say it's 50-50, but I'm just kind of showing that math doesn't always prove reality.
Right, and statistically, if you flip a head 9 times in a row, statistically, the odds of you doing it again grow higher and higher and higher every time that happens against it, that
right.
happening again. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Even though it's a 50-50 chance, right?
Yeah, 50-50 chance on each flip. But again, when statistically, when you look at it under that model, theoretically, if you flipped it 10 times,
I love it because that's what I'm saying. It's like you have to get into the theoreticals of it. Yeah,
exactly.
We need Lawrence Krauss to come in here and.
Yeah, exactly. He could put something solid on it for us.
You got another question, babe?
Yeah.
Shoot.
It is sorry. Hold on a second.
Okay, she's saying hold on. What?
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I was, since she's looking for something, I was just going to mention, because you mentioned last week about the video that I did, and this goes back to math. I did a video, Is Jeranism Flat Wrong?, based on a video that said Jeranism is flat wrong, that was proven that where in the world did Jeranism get this number from? He didn't even do the math to see how far away the moon was, because Jeranism says absolutely 100% that the moon is about 3,000 miles away, and then it was proved that the Moon is, in fact, what was that number? Is it 16 or no, like 200 something thousand, 266,000 miles away? Something like that.
238, I think, or something.
So it was like 200 something thousand miles away, and then you're made fun of because you don't do real math to see that it was 3,000 miles away. You're just full of crap. But if you go and watch that video, Is Jeranism Flat Wrong? You'll see that if you start with that the Earth is flat and you do the same exact math that was done, you will see that it proves that the Moon is like 3,440 miles away from Earth. But if you go with the notion that the Earth is round and it's a globe, then that would show that the Moon is the 200 something thousand miles away. Same math, coming out to two completely different conclusions, but it all depends on what you start with. Is the Earth flat or is the Earth a globe?
Yeah, I really appreciate you doing that video because I just got to the point where I wasn't going to respond to that guy anymore. But no, I mean, numbers are a funny thing. Here, I'll do a quick little experiment. You may have heard this before, but I'm sure some people on the chat have never heard it. So it'll just be like one of those guess your number games. So if you think of a number right now in your head, any number you want, you can pick any number in the world, and then double it. Okay? So TJ, you doing this? So I can go against...
Oh, sorry, start over.
Okay, so take any number in your head. Okay, now double it.
Okay. Oh, no, I better write this down because I might not remember.
And then after you've doubled it, got that?
Nope.
You dropped out, Jeran.
Yeah, you went out.
Oh, am I back now?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had a number and then you doubled it.
Yep.
And then you add 10.
Okay.
Now divide by 2.
Okay.
And now subtract your original number. And your answer is 5.
You must be a Mason.
I am. 33 all the way.
It worked with me too, buddy. It worked with me, Jeran.
Did they teach you that in Jesuit school?
Yep, that was basically all I learned there. So.
What did you start with, Bob?
I started with 14.
I started with 10.
Okay.
Yeah, it works with any number. So,
yeah.
Which just is one of those things where math is a human invention, and it just works out that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do a card trick that is actually very much related to that, where you take and you stack the deck ace through king, in each of the 4 suits.
Right.
And then you cut the deck 13 times. And when you do that, and you start laying the cards out, they all come right back out in perfect order, which I think is kind of cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Baby, you have another one?
Yes, yes.
Go ahead.
First of all, do you know who Vigo is? V-I-G-O? Can Jeranism give a shout out to Vigo?
Oh, shout out to Vigo.
Okay.
There you go.
Question from Mr. D-Knuckle again.
Mm-hmm.
Something about what are your thoughts on long 17-hour days in Southern Hemisphere? How and keep a 24-hour day. Something about them having shorter days in the Southern Hemisphere. The White Rabbit videos say that it totally debunks flat Earth. So that's an important question.
Did you hear that, guys?
Yep, I sure did.
No, I didn't hear it that well.
It's basically somebody asking about the 17-hour days in the Southern Hemisphere, and also asking about 24-hour daylight in this Antarctica, I'm guessing.
Or 18-hour South American days.
Or 18-hour South American days. And I think, I know that the answer I heard on this was on the Ball Earth Skeptic show. And, I can repeat what they said, but it's something that a lot of these kind of questions, I have no proof that happens. It's the same thing with the 24-hour day in Antarctica. I've seen 2 videos of it. Both videos look extremely suspect to me. Both videos are put out by like government or science-like sites. It just seems like you'd have a lot more videos of a 24-hour day in Antarctica if it did take place. They love to tell me that 100,000 people go down there to vacation a year or something. That's a nice vacation, isn't it? It's what I think of when I think of vacation, is freezing. But since I don't see those things happen, I don't really have an answer for it yet, but I'll let you guys take that one.
Okay, TJ, you want to do it, or you want me to answer first, or?
Nope, don't really have one for that.
All right, so here's my take on it. And I'm looking right now at the research stations in Antarctica, and I mentioned this, I think, last time, and there's a bunch. But if you go to basically Wikipedia, and if you look up research stations in Antarctica, the only one that is at actually 90 south that they claim is the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. All the other ones, for example, ABOA is at 73 degrees, 3 minutes south. Another one is the Almirante Brown Antarctic Base at 64 degrees, 53 minutes, 43.1 seconds south. And I'll just go down and basically highlight these. Another one at 62 degrees south. Suka Station, 71 degrees south. Belgrano 2, 77 degrees south. But basically, as you go down there, here's one, Concordia Station at 75 degrees south. But as I told you last time, you don't see anything very often that goes beyond 80 degrees south. Here's Kunlun Station, which is China's, at 80 degrees south. So I find that suspect, you know, that most of them are between 60 and 80 degrees, 60 and 75 degrees south, really, is the majority of them. And it's like, that seems very strange to me. So I looked at one of those videos, and I saw that the video that this guy was supposedly at, that he was recording this daylight, was considerably further north than what we would consider to be Antarctica. He was, in fact, he was one in the 60 degrees south latitude range. And of course, when you get that, it changes the game altogether, and it completely invalidates results, because you are not talking about Amundsen Scott. You are not talking about the absolute South Pole, because in the flat Earth model, first of all, it would be pretty much dark all the time. So I guess what I'm saying is that when you look at these positions, and you can go to Wikipedia and look at it, it's, like I said, it's under research stations in Antarctica, you see the great majority of them are nowhere near 90 south. In fact, the only one that's claimed to be there is Amundsen Scott. So I would say that those experiments are highly dubious, and I wouldn't tend to believe much of it at all. And the next time you see a video like that, find out where the station is that they're supposedly shooting this, and then look at the degrees south latitude, because I think you'll be surprised.
And that brings me up a point I wanted to say earlier. That's hard to do, but it's something that's important for everyone, whether you believe in flat Earth, a concave Earth, a globe Earth, is that if we start with assumptions that we believe that are correct, but we don't have the proof to prove it, and we start with that and then say, well, this is, so then why? Well, then we've got a problem, because, well, we didn't do the research on our own. And that's one of the issues with this, is that we have, what, a handful of videos, not very many, and then everyone that brings it up has never been there. Just like we had this discussion, me and Bob and this other guy, he was the expert on flying and the rotation of the Earth and how that affects planes. He was the expert on flight equipment, and I mean, this guy was the expert on programming for the flight computers, but he has never programmed anything. He's never piloted. He's never even went through pilot school, but he knew everything that happens in pilot school and how they teach you for Coriolis and for rotation of the Earth.
Yeah, he was kind of a legend in his own mind, right, TJ?
Yeah, this guy was pretty amazing, except for an expert on all this stuff and really has no experience with any of it. He's just regurgitating information. And, I mean, we just have to be careful with that, because one, there's so much manipulation going on out there. If you just look at the Earth alone and the moon, and it's like all the conspiracies and conspiracy theories and what's going on and what's not going on and what works and what doesn't work. There's so much information out there that we really got to be careful to make sure that we are able to really prove our facts before we state them as facts. I know that I was watching Stars Are Souls the other day, and he was doing some temperature readings for the moon to see, is it really cooler in the moonlight versus the shade. And at one point he was at the beach, it was windy, said yes, but then when he got home it was like, no, it's not. So at that point it's like it's inconclusive, but then there's a lot of people that spread that information around that in the moonlight it's cooler, but in the shade it's warmer. So we spread information around that probably none of us have tested. And so I think that's an important thing, that we actually have some reliable information versus, well, I've got this video that shows this guy showed me his watch and it was this time and the sun was obviously out, and it's obvious the guy was sleeping because he wouldn't sleep during the day, he would be sleeping at night, so it's got to be right. Which someone could have been just joking around and made that video, and or maybe someone really wanted to manipulate people and they changed their watch. Or maybe it really is true, but we just don't know.
I totally agree. I think that's important, and I try not to do that. In fact, I get links to so many videos, and the second I get there, I hate when they make a claim that they are just basically either getting from another video or something. I mean, if you watch my videos, for the most part, I'm trying to pick those apart myself. The recent one about the NASA building, you can look on the internet, you won't find anybody who has ever said that the NASA building is a lie as far as the size of it. But I do.
Yeah, and you raise a great point on it too, Jeran.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you start to look at things in a different way, and it's just fun to rip them apart. So I try not to do that, because when I get to a video and somebody does that, I just turn it off, because I don't want to get that in my head that, well, this is true because so-and-so said it and so-and-so tested it. I'd rather pick things apart myself, and hopefully if I see something that's true and it fits my model, or it fits the reality that I live in, I'll repeat it, but I usually will at least make the point to say, so-and-so says this, or I heard this, and I get things wrong all the time. I mean, I have a lot of people that have problems with some of the recent star things I've been trying to get across, and I just go back to the drawing board and redraw it, because it simply means I'm not explaining it right, more than I'm wrong, because I can in my head see it doesn't fit. But it's sometimes hard to dictate that, and the reason why is because it's impossible to live on a damn sphere, so it's impossible to explain why you can't. Since everybody believes that we do. You have another question?
Yeah.
Shoot.
So to tell people there's a difference between a cult and cult. Okay. Next question is, do you think all the sky spraying is related to obscuring our range of visibility?
That's all in Bob right there.
Asked by Patrick B.
Okay.
That one.
That's mine.
Okay. Well,
Repeat
I don't
the
know.
question.
Okay, she
hear it,
wants
Bob?
the question was basically, do you think that all chemtrails and spraying is meant to obscure our visibility? My answer to that is, I think that may be part of it. I mean, it's certainly a side effect of whatever it is they're actually intending for it to be, because like I commented on that one video that Melissa shot of the moon, that you published, I think last week, Jeran, that what that was to me, at least what I think, is that they have been spraying for the last nearly 18 years, and that these particulates are so incredibly saturated into our atmosphere that even on a cloudless day, we see we see powder blue skies. We've lost our deep blue skies. I mean, maybe not everybody's out there as old as I am, but I remember, many years ago, the skies could be absolutely gorgeous deep blue, and they're just not that way anymore. They're a powdery white, powdery blue thing.
That's your eyes, Bob.
Yeah, it must be my eyes going to hell. That's got to be it. But so I think that's definitely a side effect of the spraying. I don't believe that is the primary reason for the spraying, not by any means. And I've already, expressed my thoughts on, what I think they are. So I won't, report myself to the Department of Redundancy Department by going over it again. But yeah, my answer in short is yes. That could be part of it. And it certainly is definitely a side effect of it. So there you have it.
Okay. Well, and I would say that I can't say for sure it's spraying, but every time we've gone to the beach, which has now been 10 or 11 times just in the last 2 months, there is a almost still low-laying fog layer that sits at the horizon. So I still have not been able to see a boat go over the horizon because and it does not move. It's not like fog or clouds that move. It is a sitting, it looks like a wall.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I can't say that it's spraying because I don't know, but I would say that it wasn't there years ago. So, I don't know, but I think it does, definitely, whatever that is, hurts my visibility a lot.
Yeah, it does. And it's, like I said, it's been happening for 18 years. At least that's the first time I detected it and started looking into it.
It's like I told you about Lake Okeechobee or whatever it's called there in Florida.
Right.
What's it called again?
Okeechobee.
Okeechobee?
Yeah, Okeechobee.
I think it's Lake Okeechobee. Second biggest lake in the United States. But if you go check it out on Google Earth, or if you live in Florida, you could attest to this, that they've built up a wall around this lake. It's a mound of dirt that goes all the way around this lake that's about 30 miles by 30 miles. And, I mean, the reason they're doing it is clear. Is because if you stood at one side, you'd see the other, and it would cause some questions as to the rotundity of the Earth.
Yeah. Did they mention by any chance, Jeran, where like Lake Pontchartrain ranked in lake sizes?
No, but I'll look it up when we get the next question because I would be interesting to know too.
Yeah.
I just thought it was the second largest, but I don't know. Lake Pontchartrain's huge.
It is huge, and of course they've got the highway that goes over it. And
that is awesome, that bridge.
It's stunning. Yeah, I used to drive it all the time. When I was in the Air Force, I was stationed at Keesler Air Force Base, which is in Biloxi, Mississippi. And of course, when I was down there, we would drive back and forth over Lake Pontchartrain to New Orleans, for Mardi Gras and all kinds of other fun stuff when you're in the military. But yeah, I'll never forget that place. I mean, it's just amazing. And of course, there's also, I guess, highways, and I've never been, out to the Florida Keys either. But I guess there's highways that connect the Keys together that would be pretty spectacular, also, I think.
Okay, baby, you have another one? Shoot.
So this one, I'm going to ask and then tell you my two-word answer.
Okay.
First is asked by Music of Sound. She says, "What is NASA really observing, if not space?" And my answer is their knob heads and their pocketbooks. It was the vulgarity ball.
So yeah, I don't know what NASA's doing. They're stealing money. The last couple evenings I've been watching the Congress hearings. Again, I guess I have a different opinion of hilarity than everyone else because, yeah, I mean, you'll really get a kick out of watching Bolden, who's the head of NASA, have to answer questions from Congress. He is completely an ass in every way to every question. The most recent one, actually I think it was last year's, so it was the 2015 budget. Watch that one and it's hilarious. He brought one graphic that had 3 pictures on it, and it was the Earth, and then a picture of an asteroid, and a picture of Mars. And 15 times throughout the hearings, he said, "Can you bring up that graphic again, please? I got to refer to that graphic." And he would say, "We're very Earth-based right now. we need to get to the asteroid so that we can get to Mars.
Like, I think we can all agree that
And
Mars is the next.
yeah, it was just hilarious, and those things are hilarious to watch because all it is him trying to get more money. And
Yes.
they had one point where they asked him, "Why did you fund this particular survey?" Somebody did a survey and NASA funded it, $26,000. He says, "Why did you fund this survey?" And Bolden says, "We have nothing to do with that survey, and we don't back the results." And they said, "Okay, why'd you fund it for $26,000?" He says, I don't know. They must have been doing another survey for us when they did that survey, but we don't back it." And they kept saying, "Well, why did you, if you don't know what it was for, what did you fund it for?" "Well, I can't say. I just know that we don't back that particular result." And it was about income equality. That's what this survey was about. It cost $26,000. I'm like, man, I'll be happy to do an income equality survey if NASA wants to front me $26,000 and then just not care where it went or what the results were or what the test was even about. So it's nonsense. You saw my video that those guys are taking $16,000 for that flight.
Yeah, first class.
Can you believe it? $16,000. I mean, how do you feel good about yourself knowing that you're using taxpayer money and you're going to take a $16,000 flight? They said a regular flight coach is like $800. You know, it's just, it's insane the way they handle their business. And yeah, I hate NASA more than anything. I think that they are the reason why we are where we are, because somehow they put themselves out there as scientific, they put themselves out there as mathematic, they put themselves out there, and they are the only source any of us have of where we live. What do we live on? All these things we talk about every single week, everything that I do videos on, all this stuff could go away tomorrow if NASA did what? Told the truth. Like, ooh, keep lying, guys. You guys are impressive. So my goal is to, in my lifetime at some point, it better be in school books that NASA is a joke, and was always. So, hey, we all have goals, right?
Yep. That along with all the other frauds that are being perpetrated and have been throughout history. So.
Absolutely. It's sad because it's just a lot of people that don't deserve it. We don't, we did nothing to deserve being flat out fooled, and they keep doing it. That's the saddest thing.
So I kind of want to address that a little bit too. That question of what is it that we're actually looking at, and I have my telescope. I've gone out, looked at night, and you see some interesting lights in the sky and stuff like that. But again, going back to that Jose Escamilla video about John Leonard Walson, when I look at things like that, and I don't know if you've ever seen that video, Jeran. I'll send you a link to it at some point, or you can just Google it. But when I look at those objects that Leonard Walson is photographing with his special photographic equipment that he invented, and they look like these figures that they're like giant starships or something, and they're constantly morphing in the sky. They change shapes and they come up with all these different weird patterns. I mean, sometimes you think you can see like gigantic skeletons or a large starship. It's absolutely bizarre to watch this. And one comment that has always stuck with me that John Leonard Walson made about it is that he says when he looks now at the stars in the Big Dipper, he will never be able to look at them the same way again, as in inferring that they are not stars but some other light transmission source for some other purpose. And of course, I've said that I'm not a religious person, but it's interesting that the Bible in the creation account, in the Genesis account, talks about let the lights in the sky be for signs and for prediction of the seasons and all these other things, but it's going back to the signs. What exactly is it that it's trying to say? Pardon your shelf there. That really, it's intriguing to look at it that way. So rather than just looking at them as stars, as what NASA tells us they are, What other possibilities could they be? And I like to contemplate stuff like that. So anyway, that's what I want to say about that. TJ, you got anything?
Are we answering another question? Because I got lost.
Okay, no, it's the same question about what are we looking at when we look at the stars
Oh,
or the sky.
Or what is NASA doing? I think was the actual question. Or what are
Yeah,
they?
yeah.
What are they observing? I think they're taking pictures from twice as high as an airplane is. That's about it.
yeah, it's interesting when we look at the different NASA footage that they release, saying it's the ISS, because it's you just really have to pay attention to details. That's really important. And one of our problems is that Hollywood, and I just use that generally as the media for video, they've really hurt us, because when we see something, we're so used to seeing effects and this third party that's a camera looking on and doing all these camera moves, so that when we see this kind of stuff happen, where cameramen show up where they shouldn't be or whatever, it just looks normal to us because we're used to seeing it. Like some of the current stuff with the ISS, I'll watch some of their videos they put out, and I'll see where they look out the window and the Earth is spinning below. They're out floating in space and working on the ISS, and the Earth is below spinning. And then I'll see a shot where someone's going through, and they'll open up a window or whatever that is, and then they'll look outside for a few seconds and close it back up, but the Earth wasn't moving. So how can the Earth be moving through some windows but not other windows? And if you weren't really paying attention, you'd probably just see that and like, oh, that's really cool. And you may not have seen that. Why was the Earth not spinning? There was enough time that we should have seen it spinning like all the other shots. So there's definitely a lot of manipulation going on from NASA's side. And why is it that sometimes you see some videos out there? Maybe it wasn't NASA that I was looking at, but I don't know. There are shots of the Earth where there were stars behind it, and someone put all these videos together. But I think that was that other company you had mentioned, Jeran, like NES or NAES or something like that.
Nestle?
No,
Or
that
no.
produces
Oh,
video.
that, yeah. I know what
ESA?
you're talking about.
Is that it, ESA?
Yeah, that's a European space agency.
Yeah, so when they put out videos, theirs have stars in the background moving around, and NASA's has nothing, and it's like no idea really what's going on.
Now, mark this, you'll never see me do this, but I'll give NASA credit because at least they know they can't fake that, so they don't do it. Go look at ESA. They'll just fake anything. They just put crap up there, and I don't know how people believe it, but
Jax is right up there with them. I think.
Jax is a joke too.
Oh my
their
God.
moon stuff is classic.
It's beyond belief. Literally.
It's really good. Yeah, anybody who's listening to this, if you for whatever reason don't believe in the flat Earth or don't think we're on the right track, I just beg you to please go spend a day, watch JAXA videos, watch ESA videos, watch photos from Mars, which are so clearly taken down in South America. They're in the desert. I mean, it is so obvious that everything they're doing is fraudulent.
Yep, or just watch the ISS live viewing experiment.
Absolutely.
That's a show on itself.
It is hilarious. Every camera shot has to be behind some big hunk of metal. Like that's where you would put cameras.
Right.
I want this big hunk of metal sticking in 3/4 of my camera shot here. That's how you take pictures.
Yeah, brilliant.
Geniuses. So just so you know, your Lake Pontchartrain is number 11, and Lake Okeechobee, which I thought was number 3, is number 10. So just I guess it's Okeechobee is the second largest freshwater lake behind Lake Michigan that's contained entirely in the 48 states.
Right.
So,
and I know Alaska has a lot of lakes too, but I don't think they're that big.
How about this though? It says that that lake is one of the shallowest. It averages 9 feet.
Oh, wow.
So I think I'm going to keep looking into that lake. Like I said, I already got a photo that shows clearly from one side of the lake to the other, which
Is
is
that the one
20.
in Florida you're talking
Yeah.
about? Or,
Uh-huh.
okay, not
It says
Florida.
average. No, yeah, your lake was average 65 feet, I think. So, you have another question?
Yeah.
Okay. Was it scary driving across there? Real quick, or did I have to ask that?
It was weird, but it was cool. I mean, I wasn't afraid of it. I thought it was kind of neat.
Right. I know. I still get the heebie-jeebies every time I drive across the Golden Gate or something. I like it.
Yeah.
It's fun, but at the same time,
Yeah.
you're thinking, no earthquakes now, whatever you do.
That's like me on the Royal Gorge Bridge here in Colorado. That's bizarre. It's scary.
What city's that in?
Canyon City.
Oh, okay. Because you know where I was for the 1989 San Francisco earthquake?
Where?
I was at
Oh,
the World Series game.
Oh my God! Oh,
Nine
jeez.
years old. We that earthquake happened at 5:04, and we lived in Gilroy at the time, which is about an hour and 15-minute drive from San Francisco. That earthquake happened at 5:04. We got home at 6:30 a.m. the following day. That's how long it took to get from San Francisco to Gilroy because freeways were shut down. I mean, you name it. But crazy story. What's the next question?
I was 2 years old and I remember it.
That's crazy.
Can
Wow.
you see this picture that I'm sharing?
Oh, let me go there.
Yeah, NASA's new picture they released of all the planets.
Look at Saturn. I like his teeth. Oh
Yeah.
boy.
That's great. That's kind of like that. Was it? Who was its video? I watched a video. Oh, it was Stinky Cash, I think, that was showing the shots of Pluto, and he actually drew in Pluto's face. It was like it was
I
right
know. I
there.
saw that.
I couldn't believe that.
Oh man. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, next question is, it appears, by Eddie Reyes, he says, it appears the craters on the moon have a shadow inside and on the outside, depending on the angle. Where does the light source come from, or what accounts for the shadow?
Yeah, we look at that a lot.
I didn't fully hear what she said.
I'll get her to speak louder next time. She just said one of the questions was the craters on the moon appear to have a shadow on the inside and also on the outside, and what light source would cause that kind of shadowing. For me, I think that it's, for the most part, from what I've seen, it's mostly fictitious when you get into the shadowing, like close-up pictures, like from the LRO. If you just watched my video where I showed one of their pictures of the moon, which clearly isn't the same moon that is in the sky because they're missing parts of it that I can see with my own 2 eyes. But I mean, I have taken photos with our own camera, and when we zoom in, you can clearly see features on the moon and shadows on the moon. But then again, I can't say where that light's coming from. So whether it's a charged light or whether it's a light being shined on it,
Dry ice melting.
who knows what it is. TJ, you got something on that one?
No, I still can't wrap my head around the light coming from the moon. So no, that's what Eric Dubé says, that it's self-illuminating. I'm not there yet. I can't see that one, especially when at times it's either not lit at all or goes through its phases where it's partially lit to fully lit. So yeah, I don't have anything on that one.
Okay.
Bob?
Well, I think that, and again, I'm intrigued also because when you look at it seems like when you look at the sun-moon lighting model, even in the flat Earth, there seem to be some incongruencies, and so that would tend to, make me believe that again, it's not reflected sunlight necessarily because of the different types, and you've talked about this before, Jeran. But I think that again, the answer may go back to magnetics. And for example, there's an effect that, one of the things we did when I was in school for electronics is we would take like radio signals and we would put a transmitter next to a fluorescent light bulb. And the fluorescent light bulb doesn't even have to be attached to anything. And you can fire up a transmitter, CB radio or anything like that, and if you have sufficient power coming out of it, and usually it doesn't take a whole lot, maybe 50 watts, but you could start talking into that CB radio and it'll light up that fluorescent bulb with nothing else attached to it. So when you look at RF, radio frequencies, and you realize that it's just an electromagnetic wave with a fairly decent intensity, and then you go back to the idea of this vortexing magnetic field that the Earth is either part of or creating, then I think possibly the moon phases could be caused by phase changes in the magnetic field that are affecting the moon in such a way that it could be causing that self-luminescence. Possibility. It's certainly something that I think is a viable possibility, and it's worth considering. But as to why it actually does it, who knows?
I'll tell you that nobody will land there.
No, I don't think so either.
That's pretty much all I know. So that brings up a good point, though, about some of the anomalies, because one of those is the eclipse. And I've already looked into the September 28th one, and what will be interesting is it appears that both the sun and the moon will be just slightly over the horizon. Now, again, I was looking at my location, so I'm not speaking for anyone else, but it'll be just over my horizon, both of them, when the eclipse happens. So that's why I'm really excited about this launch, even though I'm not seeing how I'm going to be able to launch one unless I drive somewhere far away and launch it from there, which I might do. Maybe I can make it land right in my backyard. It'd be that exact. But I'm excited to just see what do we see when we get it up there and take a look at the sun and the moon, because if you guys have watched any of those balloons to space that they have on YouTube right now, the sun and the moon certainly look peculiar. So,
yeah, they definitely do. The only thing that I see as an issue is it would be really cool to get some nice night shots of it.
Right.
But because of the fact that it's not nighttime and daytime all over the place at the same time, you're going to get mixed results. So I don't know if launching simultaneously would be the better approach, or if maybe some sort of a staggered launch.
Well, I think we want to do staggered, but it's going to take a few. It depends, I guess, on how many people volunteer to do it. Because if we get 50 people, say 10 from every continent, let's just say 10 from 5 continents or whatever, well, then we can space them out to where we have, say, 3 total launches, one at the time of the eclipse, one morning, one night, and maybe 3 people each do that time period. But if we only get 6 of us, well, then probably it would be better to do something all together. So it depends. If we get a lot of people, I would love to stagger them out. Don't you think it's a better idea?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
The broader time frame we can do this in over the full moon, I mean, absolutely is going to produce the best results, I would think.
And if we launched them all at the same time and then some drone came through and shot them all down, that might tell us something too.
No doubt.
So that brings up a question. Drones are in the news a lot lately, and I'm not sure what that's really about, if that's real or not, about near misses with planes.
I bet you it's real.
How does launching balloons work with the commercial airlines that are flying around? So maybe Bob would know something about that. I don't know.
Well, I know that whenever you do something like that, like, for example, I know that where I live, and I live very close to Denver International Airport because I work there a lot, but if I were to launch anything like that from here,
press the button.
They would not be happy about it, I can tell you that. So they would want you to, report it, get permission for it. But if you get out of what's called the airport terminal control area, then it's really not an issue at all, because basically they allow VFR flight there and of any type of craft. So as long as you're outside of the airport terminal control area, I don't think it's going to be an issue. But then again, I can't say that either with 100% certainty, because laws change all the time, and there's just no way to keep up with all of them. So I guess the best thing to do is maybe just call the local branch of the FAA and ask.
What's the distance of that for that area?
Well, the terminal control area actually has several different layers. You have like imagine like over the top of an airport, you have like a cylinder that would go up to a certain height, and then you would have like a smaller cylinder that goes up even higher above that, and then a smaller cylinder, and those cylinders would represent the area above or around the airport. So it's kind of a graduated type of scale that they make the terminal control areas in. They're very well displayed on aeronautical maps, but they are not consistent by any means from what I've seen from airport to airport. And I think a lot of that has to do with the type of traffic that those airports have. So again, I think probably the best answer would just be call the FAA and say, are we good or not? And that way you kind of, CYA.
All right. You have another final question, or okay, go ahead.
This is asked by Dennis Kelly. Where is a good place, or where are good sources to start researching the real purpose of the sun, moon, and etc.? So good places for research if you're going to research into the purpose of the thing.
Yeah, I mean, my answer would be everywhere. I know it sounds...
That's a terrible answer.
Well, I think that that's the truth. I don't know that there's any... I think, for me, I need to see what NASA says about something. I want to then see what somebody else says about it, what the government says about it. From there, I can draw it. But I don't know. Do you guys have an answer for that? Where's the best place to research to start on the sun and moon and planets and etc.?
To start, well, I don't know. I mean, I suppose my answer to that would be start with NASA, so that you can get a model that is probably the opposite of what the truth would be. Wow, that was loud. And so, but I mean, I follow some really interesting characters that not very many people would probably follow, but I found things in some of their videos that it's very intriguing. For example, one of the guys I subscribe to is a guy named Super Mush Mouse, and what he does is, he has the idea that the moon is made up of like archons or little bitty orbs and stuff, and he comes up with some really intriguing footage that actually lend a certain degree of credibility to his assertions, as crazy as they may sound. But I like to look at different people and different takes, even if they're not very highly subscribed to, because you just never know where you're going to find a diamond in the rough, or somebody has a really incredible observation or revelation that can really fit into a piece of the puzzle. So me, I check the mainstream sources, of course, but I also like to look at the oddballs too, because I think everybody, no matter how whacked out they are, can usually bring something to the table, and I try and keep an open mind.
TJ?
I think that in addition to that is get off YouTube and go to a library, or even search around for the oldest books that you can find about the astronomy and stars and the moon, and see what people believed as far back as you can go, and see how that compares to today, and maybe you'll be able to find how they change things.
Agreed. I agree with that, TJ.
Might have to go in the library.
That's great. We have a lot of old books here, and we'll look at dictionary definitions and encyclopedias from the late 1800s, and you would be shocked at the way words have changed, or the meaning of even Earth has changed, or globe, or sphere. Those things, how much they've changed.
Yeah. One of the things, Jeran, that also, in addition to this, that I like to read is there's a lot of publications that were done like in the early 1900s and even in the 1800s regarding like zetetic astronomy, which, of course, when you look at zetetic, it means basically to go very, very religiously, very much by the scientific method, the true scientific method. And I think that there are some absolutely just priceless books that were published in the 18 and 1900s regarding cosmology. And I think that science back then was a lot more honest than it is now. And therefore, I think that the books that resulted out of scientists back then was considerably less influenced by the powers that be and much more honest as far as inquiry and investigation.
I think without a doubt. I think for me it's obviously the funding that science gets now, because the government basically provides science with funding, and these you have to be an alumni from a certain school, or the alumni association will give this funding. And so if you're studying the flat earth, as a weird example, you will never get 1 penny. So if you're a scientist coming out of school and you want funding, which is how you do any experiment, I mean, if you think these guys are going out and building CERN with their own money, you're wrong, that they're getting funding from governments to do that. And so they have to stay in their dogma. It's their religious dogma that they have to stay right within those lines of the already established truths, and that's why we get nothing but the same stuff to pop out. Whereas back, say, 1800s, 1850s, there's some great books. I don't know if you guys have been trying to fill up the site a little bit, but if you go to jeranism.com, we're loading a lot of our ebooks that are free there. There's got to be already 30 or 40 books that you guys can check out. Some really good, quality ebooks. Yeah, really good ones. So,
yep.
So yeah, you guys can help yourselves to those. We have quite a little collection, so we have gone through them, and there's some great information. I like what you said about review. I mean, the reason I say review everything is because I think that's how you can get the answer. You shouldn't be out there looking for answers. I don't think that's the way you should research. For me, I like to take everything in, and I kind of have a little filter that does it match what my reality shows me? Does it match? And it doesn't mean just because someone says something bad that they also don't have some truth in there. So hearing everything at one time isn't going to kill you.
Yep. Just apply your own filter to it and your own common sense. And honestly, I'm a big believer, and if it feels right, if it sets right in your gut, I tend to try and go with it. I trust my intuition, and I think really when the day is done, that's all any of us can do. In addition to trying to do as much of the scientific method as possible in trying to prove it valid, but I find that my intuition is very accurate a lot of the times about stuff that just comes across. It feels right, it sounds right, it resonates. Okay, I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to look into it. So that's what I do.
And that's why I tell people to take that globe and the idea of it and sit with it for a day, because I think that's something we were all taught when we were 6, 7 years old. The globe was in the classroom. Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, discovered the world was round. And before that, people were pre-science and pre-intelligence, and they believed in a flat earth. And when you tell people that as kids, we all grew up knowing we knew the truth. And so when you get to this point, I'm mid-30s, it's tough to break that down, but I do believe in your own intuition. And if you can sit there for a day and think of all the different scenarios that come from you being attached from a force to a ball that is spinning at an amazing speed and flying through space at an amazing speed and rotating a sun in the vast endlessness of space, which if I asked you what's the definition of space, what would you tell me? Isn't it the absence of matter?
Yeah, that would be one definition.
But space is filled with matter. Like, granted, there's not a lot of it, but those kind of things start to kind of play with, well, for instance, when that space shuttle, let's say, leaves the Earth and goes into space, where's the breaking point? Wouldn't air get out into space? Because those kind of things.
That's never made any sense to me. It's like, how can you have
That's what I mean.
How can
Is
you
these
have an
things don't make
atmosphere right
sense.
next to a vacuum? And so I thought to myself, it's like, okay, well, maybe it has something to do with a magnetic containment. But then I think, nah, that's not it, because the levels of what they tell us, or the ionosphere and troposphere and stuff like that, don't jive with that. So it just doesn't make any sense to me either. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, and so that's why I just tell people all the time to just really just think about it, because if you don't want to think about it, then you are willing to just give away your brain to people who tell you they're smarter than you, and it's something that I'm not going to do anymore because they've been proven wrong in many instances, and that's enough for me to say I'd rather come to my own conclusion, and if I'm wrong, well, shame on me, But if it's going to keep being I'm getting found wrong because I believe somebody else, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it, and it doesn't make sense. And all you have to do is just think. They say our atmosphere moves with the Earth as it spins, and they say space is a static area with no air. So if there's a block between our atmosphere spinning with Earth and space that has no atmosphere, then the atmosphere would get ripped off as it
Exactly.
spun.
And not only,
Yeah, what they're describing is make believe. It's not real. It's cartoons. It's mental magic. It's sure it works. Oh yeah, fantastic if you want to dream about it or you want to kind of envision some science fiction movie. Whatever you want, that's fine. But then to apply that and say, Jeran, this is where you live. This is the reality that you live in. Is these crazy, fantastical things, and it's insane.
right. Yeah, ask yourself this question, and I'd like, any of the ball Earth believers to answer this question. But if the atmosphere is spinning with the planet and at the equator, the planet is moving at a rate of 1,040 miles an hour, and of course that rate would decrease as you go up in latitude, then at some point the atmosphere is going to have to cross over the point of when you go supersonic. In other words, it's going to have to drop below the speed of sound. And conversely, at some point, it goes above the speed of sound. And one would think that wherever that point is, and I would imagine it would probably be around, well, right about where I am here in Denver, that there should be some really bizarre atmospheric phenomenon going on, not the least of which would be really loud booms. So, I mean,
open up a can of worms.
Yeah.
You've heard about like all the various noises people have been hearing around the world.
Oh yeah,
we talked about it last week.
They're gonna try to say it's proof for like Bob.
Oh, way to go, Bob!
Round Earth.
Now I did it.
Way to go! Yeah, I mean that's just something that really before, because I was fighting this, now it's 8 months ago. I was really fighting the flat Earth and saying, no, it is what we were taught. No, it is the math. Until I really just sat with my thoughts and contemplated a globe and living on it, and I woke up from that moment like it's impossible. It is absolutely a crazy thought, and we were taught it, and that's the only reason anybody thinks it, because nobody has any proof of any kind, and everyone wants to say all these proofs, the Coriolis effect, all these things. You don't notice those things, you don't see those things, you don't feel those things. You're simply told that they explain what you were taught, and that's a safe outlet for you to say,
Yeah.
no, it's what I taught, because it does. It'll break down your whole existence. It breaks down everything that you know is true. It will destroy it all.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, you need to allow yourself, at least, there's nothing wrong with questioning it, and that's what's so amazing about these guys that pop on the channels and in the comments that are screaming and yelling and cussing. I mean, it's all like they all need their mouths taped shut because they just are outlandish. And it's, what is wrong with me questioning things if they're facts? I mean, if you're questioning things that are true, nobody should have an issue with that, because you're going to come to the true conclusion. And so people are getting really upset, like, how dare you question our ball? How dare you question the spherical Earth? And it's, if it were a true model, then they should be happy I'm testing it, because guess what conclusion I'm going to come to? That the Earth's a ball.
That's right.
But they're, for some reason, screaming and yelling about, why would you ever test the curvature of the Earth? Why would you dare? And it's, well, because when you do the math, between California and Hawaii, there's a 789-mile high curvature. And that is insanity, because the ISS flies 250 miles high. And the highest mountain in the United States is 3 miles high. And so to tell me that there's 789 miles of curvature between two states that, I mean, I've flown between many times. I don't go over any 789-mile hill. We fly straight to Hawaii, and it's flat. And I can look out the window and see that it's flat. And there's, I mean, once you get there, it's just, the rest of it is, okay, why did they tell me that we live on this ball? Why did they tell me space? Why did they tell me planets? Why did they tell me trillions and billions of miles? Well, it's because they couldn't make the math work any other way but to say the stars are so far, it doesn't matter in our mathematics where they lay.
Yeah.
So,
agreed.
Crazy.
So we probably should start thinking about wrapping this up, but
definitely.
But yeah, it's been great chat, and you know, hopefully we won't get quite as much criticism this time about not taking questions, because we've taken several. And you know, I enjoyed it. I think this is great, and I like throwing around ideas, and I think a lot of people enjoy hearing this type of stuff, you know, without being preached at, just, you know, to kind of be in on the discussion. I think it's a good format that works.
So do I, and I'm totally open if anybody has ideas or suggestions. None of us have done something like this before, so don't expect perfection, but if you have a way that you've seen work in other shows, or if you have something you want us to discuss, feel free to email me and let me know what you think, you know, if we should discuss a certain topic, or if you want us to cover a certain area, because I think it's good too. It's just a chance to kind of talk, and I think you guys asked some questions today that were helpful for me and things I need to look into. That's why I like it. So, TJ, final words or anything in closing?
Whoa. Always so many things to say. I kind of got lost in what you guys were just talking about, but one of the things that when I was discussing this with my wife, she's already gotten used to when I just look into real crazy things. So I started talking about the flat Earth, and we discussed the from Kansas City. We live in Kansas City to Topeka. It's 64.5 miles, almost 65. And just for the curve for 65 miles, it's a half mile of curve, or 2,816 feet of curve. And for her job, she had to drive out there a couple times, and I asked her, it's like, from here to Topeka, do you think there was a curve, a drop of 2,816 feet? And she's like, no way. She didn't have to think about it. Like, no, that's huge. That is a huge drop. There's no way that I went over a curve or down or whatever 2,816 feet. That's not even possible. So, yeah, it's all about testing and dealing with our reality for sure. So that's just like you're saying. I don't understand why people, just because we're not part of their club or whatever, why they would have a problem. Like, really, if it is a reality and we are really seeking the truth, that we should, if the ball Earth is the truth, then we should come back around eventually to it.
Yep, well said.
Yeah, it would only confirm their beliefs already, so it's really baffling when you have these guys making challenges. Like, there's been a recent one for money, for a couple $1,000 challenge, which I just don't understand. But they make them, so we'll follow up with them.
Yes, we will. And speaking of that, I guess we can kind of address that a little bit. But a YouTuber by the name of Trutheracy3, Chris Lord, who I came by him years ago when I was kind of interested in word roots and word etymologies. And honestly, this guy was just the best that was out there. He basically would go against the normal accepted paradigm of etymology, and he would give real-world examples that would be very self-evident, you know, in the way that they're used in everyday context. And so I was really attracted to this guy as far as his research, and so I've been following him for a long time. But he basically lately has gone on a complete tirade against flat earthers, and he's made, I think, now 10 or 12 or some ridiculous amount of videos trying to debunk the flat earth. And his latest one, or I think he's made another one since, is a call out directly to people like Jeran, Jeranism, Eric Dubay, Barding Man, etc., where he was originally offering $5,000 if they could answer one simple question, or if we could answer one simple question as flat earthers, and that would be why the flat earth, in his belief, would say that Hawaii is to the northwest when it's clearly southwest from California. And you know, when I look at that challenge, it's just so patently absurd. And every part of the premise that he's talking about that I wrote back, and you guys can see, and I accepted this challenge and told him that he will have his answer. And it's also going to bring out another area of my research, and also something Jeran's been looking into about how deceptive some of the models that are applied to the ball earth are when they are applied to the flat earth. And that's basically as far as I'm going to go into it there. But suffice to say that his challenge has been taken officially. Guys, go to his webpage, look at it. You can read what I said. And we will be providing an answer to that in detail. And we're going to go beyond the name calling, and we're just not going to, we're not going to play that game. We're going to do it on hard facts, we're going to do it on observation, and we're going to do it using common sense. And we're going to see if he and Red's Rhetoric and some other guy, Tony T or something like that, are actually good to their word when we provide this answer. So time will tell. We are certainly going to do our part. We are going to answer that challenge, and you know, we'll just let the YouTube community be the judge of whether we got it right or not. I happen to think we got it very right. So be looking forward to that.
I agree wholeheartedly. Yep. So if anybody else has questions too, you can feel free to ask us those questions, or if you want to give money away, then make a public offering of your money for the answer to your questions. But that's why we have the show. So the question could have been answered easily here, or might cost you a little penny or two. Anything else? Anybody? Last words? Final words? So we hope to keep doing this same time, Monday nights, 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. Sometimes there might be different people on if we bring other people on, or it might be the same 3 of us or 2 of us. Who knows? Maybe even 1 of us.
Next week it'll be 3 Hawaiian time, because I'll be coming to you from Maui.
Woo! Can't wait. Maybe we could even do the sun thing. Well, no, that won't work Monday. Maybe Sunday. Are you going to be there Sunday?
Yep, sure am.
That'd be cool. Then we could talk about it on the show. So be interesting to see. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. And again, if you have any comments, suggestions, questions, email me. Otherwise, treat each other kindly and don't lie to each other, and all those fun things. And we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.